Hello everybody, I'm The Last Pretender, and today we're going to continue our unit series and talk about map movement. So, every unit, regardless of what stripe, is going to have some map movement score. And what that score is it's basically a pool of points that unit expends in order to move from one province to another. Now, how much does it cost to move from one province to another is going to be dependent on what kind of province it is. So, whenever you're moving from one province to another, you're spending points twice. First, you have to spend points to leave the current province that you were in, and then you were spending points a second time to enter into the new province. And the costs are thus. To move from or into plains is 3 points. From or into forests or wastes is going to be 5 points. From or into the sea is going to be 5 points. From or into a cave or highlands is going to be 6 points. From or into a swamp is 7. And from or into a mountain province is going to cost you 8 points. Okay? Now, there are other things that do modify this. 3 in particular. So the first one is snow. If you're moving from or into a snow province, it's going to cost an additional point. And if you're in enemy-controlled territory, that is going to cost you an additional 4 points to move from or into enemy territory. Unless you're stealthing, then it only is going to cost 3. And then the final modifier, at least the final one I can think of, is going to be roads. Now, roads have a -2 modifier because obviously it's more efficient to move through roads. And so, just to give a kind of brief example as to how this works, let's say you have a unit that is moving from a plains province into a forest province. Now remember I said the cost of a plains province is 3 and the cost of a forest province is 5. So it's going to cost 3 points to leave that plains province and an additional 5 points to enter into that forest province for a total of 8 points. Now, in the event that your unit has fewer map movement points than it costs to move one province, he gets to do it anyway. He gets to move a minimum of one province, regardless of whatever his map movement score may be. So he's not going to be impeded by that, unless he's in a mobile entity like a monolith or something. Now, the question is how many movement points does a unit have? Well, there is a sort of general rule associated for it, though it varies. So, heavy infantry generally has a map move of about 8. Light infantry, you're going to see usually at around 14. Light cavalry is around 20. Unicorns, interestingly enough, move faster at 26. And then you have flyers. Slow flyers are 14. Normal flyers are 20. And then fast flyers are 26. So that's kind of a general measure as to how fast things go. Another good rule of thumb is usually the larger something is, the idea is the greater its strides are, and so it can usually move faster than like human-sized units in that regard. Other things that affect a unit's movement are going to be if it has such abilities like forest survival, swamp survival, waste survival, mountain survival. These particular things are going to give it a -2 cost to move into those particular territories or out of those particular territories. And then, of course, there's flyers. Flyers kind of rewrite the whole script in that if it is a flying unit, most terrain just has a movement cost of 3. Caves have a movement cost of 5, and enemy provinces only increase your movement penalty by 1. Please note that unless they have like an aquatic feature or an amphibian feature, I do not believe, so I know for a fact, that flyers cannot move across water provinces. They have to go around them. And then, of course, the final modifier is going to be commanders. Commanders also get a little bit of a movement bonus as they get a +2. So, that's not terribly helpful to you, generally speaking, because most unit cards are just going to tell you how fast something can move, but it's kind of a big picture idea of how this is actually calculated. Okay, so that's how much actual movement costs and how it's calculated, and that's the general idea of how much map move a unit has. But how should you be thinking about this? Well, a good way to generally think about it is certain thresholds. there are certain thresholds that of which whenever a unit hits them, its map movement is better than other units. So for example, generally speaking, if you have a unit that's map move is like under 10, it's all basically the same at that point. The reason being is because it's only going to be able to move one province at a time. For the most part. Roads and stuff might vary that a little bit, but a lot of maps that most multiplayer games on a particular are played on don't have roads, but many do, so it's something to keep in mind. However, the first threshold, I would argue, of quality is you're going to see a map move of 12. Because at a map move of 12, a unit can move 2 spaces if everywhere it's going are plains. So, let's take a look right here at the light infantry unit in MA Statis. That has a map move of 12, so that means if this unit starts in a plains, to leave that plains, it costs 3 points. To enter into another plains is going to cost another 3 points. To leave that plains is going to cost another 3 points, bringing us to 9. And to enter a third plains is going to be 12. And so it can basically travel 2 provinces instead of 1, assuming that they're all plains. So that's your first one. Your second one is going to be, it generally moves up by 2. It's going to be a 14. At 14, that last plains or that first plains can be changed into something like a forest. And so it can move a little bit more. And then 16 is kind of a big one because then you can have a unit that starts in a plains, moves through a forest, and finishes at another plains. So that's kind of another big one as well. And you can kind of see how this all plays together. And so generally speaking, it's a really good idea to take a look at map movement and to give you an idea of how quickly your units can move, because sometimes it can be very important when you're defending your territory, particularly if it gets very large and you need to reinforce or send troops here or there. Map movement can be very important. It's obviously one of the reasons that flying nations can be considered so dangerous, because of the fact that they can strike anywhere and harass your economy and do a lot of damage over time. So that's kind of the general idea of map movement. It's a bit of a short video, I think, but I think that it's an informative one that can help give you a kind of good general picture of how map movement works and things you might want to look for when examining that particular stat on a unit card. In any event, I'm The Last Pretender, and you guys have been great. Take care.